Hello, I'm Emily Benson, back for your Rising Career Masterclass Workshop number 2. So, we've covered why you might be feeling the need to change and why applying for jobs online doesn't work when you really need to pivot your career. And I got some great feedback from that workshop. I'd love to hear from more of you. Shoot me an email or reach out to me on Facebook. Let me know what you thought of workshop number 1. And, I hope you were able to find a couple of minutes to complete the worksheets, although it's certainly not required. You're not going to get graded. But anyway, let's dive into today's workshop. Once you've gotten to a certain place in your career, I found that it's really typical that you've survived some professional setbacks that may have been really difficult and can impact your ability to move forward. They come with some baggage that keeps your confidence low. So, recapping from workshop number 1, we talked about a trajectory of career growth that isn't linear, right? Many professional women hit some sort of wall in our mid to senior level of our career, and climbing that same career ladder just doesn't feel like a good fit anymore. And there's some sort of crisis point that comes, right? And as I mentioned, we have to do some healing work in order to actually, pivot productively into that new direction, into a new direction where we can take on a bigger, more meaningful role. So we're going to dive into that today. What does that healing really look like? So I'm going to start with some reasons why we might actually feel burned out. And for those of you who did the worksheet from last workshop, you can think about your answers there, right? You identified what might be the source of your crisis back from this slide here on the crisis point. So you identified that. You talked about, or you might have uncovered that it's really the company that you're working for. Maybe it's your boss, or maybe it's your whole industry, or maybe it's just certain tasks that you're doing. Maybe it's your geographic location. If you checked almost all of the boxes and you're just, feeling really done with sort of absolutely everything work related, that's a sign that you have some pretty severe burnout. That's typical in helping professions, social work, teaching, nursing, doctors, careers where you take on other people's trauma and other people's needs. And it also, of course, can come when you're working really extremely long hours. So if you're in that severe burnout stage, there's probably quite a bit of self-care and therapy that may need to be done, some real stepping back from your work for a while. Maybe some of you found that, it's really your schedule that isn't working, right? So depending on our phase of life, sometimes we need more flexibility than a traditional 9 to 5 job can give us. Office jobs are often, very highly structured, and it just doesn't work for all of us. You have young children or parents that we need to take care of, or just our own bodies have a different need depending on, where we are in our life. And unfortunately, this highly structured workplace just doesn't work it just doesn't work the same way depending on the phase of life that we're in. So, I've worked with a lot of clients who thought that they would have to, sacrifice salary and, sacrifice position level in order to get more flexibility. And we've actually found ways that they're able to get the flexibility that they need, but without sacrificing everything. If it's your tasks that are burning you out, but you still love your industry, that might be a sign that you are ready to take on more of a leadership role. It might be time to let go of tasks around, implementing. You're ready for more of mentoring, more training. So you're not the one engaging in all the tasks that you're really burnt out on, but you're directing other people in how to do it. And this is really important to recognize, not just for you, but also for other people in your organization or that you might be able to bring into your organization. Because if you're doing a lot of tasks that aren't lighting you up anymore, you're holding other people back who could be learning from those. And, someone else is ready for your role and you're ready to move up. If you don't like your industry, it could be time that it's time for a big career change, right? So on that worksheet, again, you can see if you're ready for, a whole new role, a whole new career, right? So these are just some of the reasons why we might feel burned out. And, I just want you to take some time to kind of suss out what is the level of burnout here and where is it really coming from. So when we're thinking about actually healing from that burnout, there's, a couple of directions that I think we tend to go in. And, it's sort of like a continuum, I think. And on one end is this masculine model of just sort of powering through, right, our burnout and, sucking it up. This was certainly me in grad school, in my early career. I just kind of put my head down and really powered through. And ultimately, it did do, some damage to my health and my emotional well-being. So, this really is not a model that is sustainable. And I think, as we get older, it gets more and more untenable. We realize that we can't really live like this anymore, powering through. Life is just too short at this point, right? And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, we have a more feminine model of trying to heal, where we just kind of hide and, remove ourselves completely. And it feels really tempting, right? I've certainly done it on my vacations, for example, just kind of hunkered down and disappeared. And it was important for the rest part. And I think short periods of time, this is really important for us. But I wasn't really dealing with my problems when I was leaning in this direction. So finding, a middle ground between the toughing it out and the ignoring the problem is really important. Of course, there's days when we're going to have to tough it out and days when we want to hide. But finding a middle ground of steady, purposeful action is what's going to really help us move through crisis and through the period of feeling really burned out and pivoting into something much better. So, I'm going to give you some of the actions that are going to move you forward, right? It's all fun and games to say, okay, we just need to take steady, purposeful action. But what are the actions? So, I want to give you some of the really foundational stuff that I've found really works. And today I'm going to focus on 3 different actions: developing a statement of self, really clearly owning your past, even the traumas, or maybe especially the traumas, and developing your power stories so that you can control your own narrative. And in workshop number 3, I'm going to get into a lot of actions that are going to completely change your patterns and help you set up new boundaries. And then in our bonus workshop, we'll get into letting go of the stuff that just doesn't work anymore, right? And all of this is going to help you create that identity shift that we talked a lot about in workshop number 1 and really pivot your career. All right, so statement of self. So this is really, very close relative to an elevator pitch, a brief statement where you describe yourself really quickly to someone else who needs to know about you. But I call it a statement of self because it's also really about telling yourself who you are right now, right? And having a clear understanding of where you are right now and where you want to go. It really helps to ground us. I think a lot of times when we're in that crisis point and thinking about pivoting our career, we spend a lot of time just being really fuzzy and unclear. And we tell ourselves, I'm not going to take action till I get clearer. This helps you kind of remove that fuzziness. Even if you're not sure what you want, you're going to have a clear statement of self. All right, so I want you to pull up your first worksheet. The worksheets again are just linked right below this video. And I have this formula for you to work on here. And it has 3 parts. The first part is, who are you right now? What are you an expert at? What are you really good at? What are you passionate about? What do people come to you for? And if you're not, sometimes I've had clients say, well, I'm not an expert at anything. I'm a jack of all trades. Perfect. You're a jack of all trades. You have multiple skill sets, right? And you're able to insert yourself into many different roles, right? So it doesn't, you don't have to do this exactly as I say it, but think about, who you are and how you're defining yourself, your skills and your passions right now. I wonder if my cat's coming through on this video. I don't know what's going on with him. So the second part is thinking about where this expertise and this passion and this knowledge, these skills came from. How did you develop them? And then the third part is an expression of change. Just describe where you are. Are you clear on where you want to pivot? State that. If you don't know, you're in exploration mode. You're considering things, right? So maybe you're a burned out teacher. So you could say, I'm an education and public speaking expert. I developed this knowledge and skill by working for 15 years in public education, and I'm now exploring how I can use these skill sets in a corporate training or sales role. Okay, so I hope that helps there. And once you have this clear statement, parts 1, part 2, and part 3, I want you to print it out. Have it somewhere where you can see it on a regular basis, on your desk or in your planner, and repeat it to yourself. And maybe you'll keep working on it and refining it, of course. So that's, why it's different than an elevator pitch, because it's something that you're using to ground yourself and really own, who you are right now. Okay? All right. So we're also going to think about owning our past here. And this is what's really going to help you heal. I found that women have so many experiences in the workplace that we're taught are wrong, or just weird aberrations or mistakes or things we should really bury and not talk about. And I think this is so terrible, because they're what really make us strong, and it starts with our bodies. We're seen as outsiders in a traditional workplace. Management textbooks actually talk about, how do you manage women, right? Which would never happen for men, right? That's not going to be a chapter in a textbook on managing, men. So, women are, we're outside of the norm there, and our bodies are not the norm. And this, this definitely takes a toll on this in the workplace. And I'm going to talk about a specific example of this in just a little bit. But I think thinking about, experiences with being a female in the workplace, how our body has shown up in the workplace, pregnancies, those kinds of things too, they really have an impact on us. Workplace trauma really impacts confidence. I've seen this over and over again, and it's just a reality that our current economic climate isn't stable, and that, downsizing and layoffs are just really common and normal, but they cause individual level trauma. It's also true that sexual harassment and assault, microaggressions in the workplace are really common, and it just causes us to hold on to this feeling of there's something wrong with us, there's something wrong with our work, there's something wrong with our bodies, there's something wrong with us showing up in the workplace. I've also, seen with my clients this special kind of trauma that comes from our needs just being continually dismissed in the workplace, right? Whether it's needing something because of a health or emotional condition, or, for example, let me just use an example. I have, a client who gets migraines often, actually a couple clients who get migraines often. And I had to work with them to advocate for themselves, but it was really much more traumatic than it needed to be, right? They would tell their boss that, they have migraines triggered by bright light, and the boss just would not help them find a solution. And that's traumatic. I had fun looking for pictures for this workshop. I just consistently hear stories about poor management, poor leadership. And, it seems like managers are often treating this all kind of like a game. Um, you know, they often don't have formal training in, how to deal with people. So that, shows up, as them just not being really great at the emotional side of working with their employees. Even the ones with a business degree or an MBA, they often only have a couple of classes that are really about managing people, their finance and operations and production. So they just don't know quite what they're doing. I get this question quite a bit from clients. How do I navigate the workplace when I'm older, right? I feel like I'm being aged out in some way. And yeah, I do agree that can happen. We are treated like our bodies are some sort of problem. Again, and age plays into that. But we have to stop apologizing for this. We can't control if someone is going to discriminate us against us, because of our age. But we can be confident and really know that we have these deep lived work, personal and professional experiences that younger people don't have. I do think that thinking outside of the box of traditional employment is worth it for women. Trying to create something that's really yours. And that can help, mitigate this problem going forward. Being an entrepreneur doesn't have to be your full-time job, but you could start thinking about ways that you could start a side hustle, do some consulting, create something that you can build and use all of yourself, everything, your age, your body, your experience, your skills. And then we don't have to rely on uneducated people who aren't hiring the right people with the right experience. All right, so I'm going to move into storytelling, which really relates to all of this owning your past. I had a miscarriage about 8 years ago, and it happened in the workplace actually while I was teaching. So I had to end class early and race home. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever been through, yet I never mentioned it to any of my colleagues at the time. And wasn't until later that year actually that I was talking with a friend and colleague who had, her own harrowing miscarriage story, and we decided to open up about our stories together. So we began actually turning this into research. We researched pregnancy, miscarriage, secrecy, grief in the workplace, and we presented at a number of academic conferences and ended up publishing an article that I'm really proud of on miscarriage in the workplace. And a lot of women have reached out to us to share similar stories. And, ever since then, I've really tried to be as open as possible about infertility and how it's affected my work and my career, because I know how much it helps other women to hear these stories that are so similar to what they've been through. So rather than let this trauma hide as a secret, I share my story. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to start to control your own narratives too. And, you don't have to share them with people who aren't going to understand, but I do want you to own it and to be open with people who are going to draw strength from your stories. Influential people tell a lot of stories, they help us make sense of our place in the world. And, the fact is that people are going to be making up stories about us. So, the more that we can tell and put out there, the better. And then they're not making it up, right? They're listening to what we're telling them. So I want you to use that second worksheet to craft your own stories. I've got all these potential topics you could think of, and you're going to really try to add a lot of detail to the context. Think about what you did in the situation, right? What were the actions and tasks that you took? And then, what were the outcomes? Okay? So craft them. Take some time. Think about, taking up some space with your stories. Right now you're just writing it And, when you're ready, you'll share it. Okay? Bearing this stuff doesn't work. All right, so we've covered your statement of purpose, owning your past, controlling your narrative, and I hope these help you on your path to really healing from burnout and trauma. I know it's helped me a ton. And you still have a third workshop coming up on Saturday, and then a bonus workshop on Monday. So on Saturday, I'm going to talk about the most important new pattern that you can develop, and that's developing your circle of support. Another word for this is networking, which I don't like to use because so many people dislike networking, but I'm going to teach you a whole new mindset around it that's I think you'll really, really like, and some really clear steps that take the ickiness out of networking. You're not going to feel cheesy or salesy or anything like that when you use my process. And you really want to show up for this workshop because remember how I told you that applying online doesn't work? Well, building your circle of support does. So this is one that you're not going to want to miss. And don't worry, I'm not going to forget about boundaries and letting go either. I do have a huge gift for those of you that watch Saturday's training, so you definitely want to watch that one for a lot of reasons. All right, so I will see you on Saturday.